Donald Trump has already outflanked the Soros-backed Democrats now that they've gone ahead and bulled their way into a government shutdown. Trump's Truth Social post yesterday shows that he knows he has the upper hand and it's going to blow up in their faces. And it's going to blow up in more than the Democrats' faces now that Soros' hand in pushing the shutdown has come out. The Daily Caller had a headline, Soros-backed leftist group behind campaign to force government shutdown. But Donald Trump upped the ante when he told the gathered U.S. military leadership yesterday that their job is to defend America, which is under invasion from within. And Trump names Soros by name.
The people in those cities where they're being raped and shot and beat up, you know, they say, we love the military. You ever see where they interview the people on the street? I've never seen somebody say they don't, unless they're radical and paid off, because a lot of these insurrectionists are paid by, whether it's Soros or other people, but they're paid by the radical left.
Now, George Soros, Antifa, immigrant gangs, and the crazy Democrats who just shut down this government are worthy targets. They're reflections of that enemy from within, but they're easy targets, and most people don't get beyond that. But here's the problem. If you stop there, you're going to miss the real command center. The deeper system that manufactures wars and budget and economic crises is the British imperial machine, the financier, ideological, and rules-based networks that have captured our institutions for a century. Trump's advantage is he doesn't play by their rules, which is why he can actually solve the problems that they keep creating and then managing. I'm Susan Kokinda, and for decades, I've documented how the British imperial system spawned this American enemy from within. And if you see that this is something you need to learn more about, please like and subscribe, because I focus on this every week. Now, today I'm going to look at two things. I'm going to explain how Trump's Mideast plan rewired the board and how it puts British warmonger Tony Blair in the bullseye. And second, I'm going to show you that the government shutdown fight is really a Federal Reserve fight in disguise. If you want to end this endless shutdown theater, you have to cripple the Federal Reserve, not the government. So let's start with Trump's Mideast peace plan. Even establishment outlets admit that what Trump has put together is unprecedented. The Washington Post's David Ignatius, who is a longtime conduit for the intelligence community and not a MAGA fan, recognized that in his piece. He said, that sense of no exit has conditioned the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for over 45 years. I've been watching horror upon horror in this region. The door to something different seemed to open slightly on Monday. On this, Trump deserves the credit he craves. We can only hope and pray that he and his new coalition of Arab and Israeli allies will keep pushing. Now, here are the main points of what Trump did differently. He broke the rules. He negotiated outside the warring parties' ritual talking points and outside the British peacemaking industry, the one that sells endless process and never peace. And he basically negotiated the deal with a broad swath of other Muslim and Arab nations, and then he presented it to Israel and Hamas. He also recognized the complexity of Israeli politics and used his clout to potentially isolate the extreme right-wing Zionists in Netanyahu's government. It's hard to believe that there are those to the right of Bibi, but there are. And he also, most importantly, brought economics into the equation, not as a bribe, but as the actual substance of stability. Ports, power, water, rebuilding, police training, the material conditions that let people actually live. Now, many are pointing to the role of Tony Blair in the Board of Peace that's been established as evidence that this plan is going to fail. Blair is so notorious in starting and perpetuating wars that even Time magazine took note with a headline describing his perfidious role. We've documented Blair's role for decades, including his infamous speech at the Chicago Council on Foreign Relations in 1999, which is where he first openly rejected the long-standing Westphalian concept of respect for other nations' sovereignty and non-interference in their domestic affairs. He left no doubt in that speech what his ideas were based on. Quote, "But globalization is not just economic. It is also a political and security phenomenon." So when you think of neocons, think Tony Blair. And we got the Iraq War based on Blair's lies and these new global rules, and the many other wars and regime changes that follow. And some of those are precisely the wars that Trump is stopping. So what is Trump doing with Tony Blair on his Board of Peace? Most people are going to look at Blair on Trump's board and think, deep state conspiracy, Trump's been captured. A lot of people did the same thing when Trump posted about Ukraine taking back its territory and winning the war. They thought, oh, he's been captured by the neocons. But this is why you have to subscribe to Promethean Action's newsletter. We approach the world like Trump from the standpoint of grand strategy. We don't react to each tactical move or whatever blows up in your face on your social media feed. So go to the Promethean Action website and become a subscriber. Now, with Blair, Trump may be following the adage of keep your enemies close. Because if anybody doesn't think that Trump knows what Blair has been up to these last decades, they weren't paying attention to Trump's speech to the gathered military brass yesterday. He made clear that the purpose of his newly renamed Department of War is to prevent war. This administration is no longer in the business of regime change or perpetual war. Trump's policy is respect for sovereignty, which is the Westphalian principle. So either Blair aligns with it, or he's going to stand even more exposed than he is now. Now, if Trump can overturn a century of British policy in the Mideast, imagine what he can do if he does the same thing on U.S. economic policy. Because the shutdown saga we're living through right now comes from the same mother. Here we are on day one of another ritual standoff. The immediate reason is the Democrats' refusal to pass a clean continuing resolution because they want to keep certain Obamacare subsidies going. Outside of the fact that the subsidies are a bailout for the insurance companies, the political reason for the Democrats is their strategy of tension. They want to induce social friction, feed the narrative, and blame Trump and the Republicans. But it's clear from last night's vote that some Democrats, like John Fetterman, realize this is political suicide. But only a few Democrats have had the political will to stand up to the George Soros-funded Indivisible Network, which has been running an aggressive campaign pressuring Senate Democrats to hold the line, to quote, fight like hell against a clean continuing resolution. They provided their minions with a phone script and then tracking responses. The White House itself called out Soros's role. The Daily Caller quotes a White House spokesman saying Senate Democrats must reject the Soros-funded pressure from the radical left and pass a clean CR. Now, the official focus on Soros and his foundation and the administration's stated intention to investigate him is welcome and long overdue, since this guy has been creating chaos for decades. But there is much, much more. Most people aren't going to get beyond the fact that Soros is a rich billionaire, a globalist, and of course, some fixate on the fact that he is nominally Jewish. That misses the deeper and more important point, the point you need to understand to actually be strategically effective. The deeper reality is this. Soros is a front man for British imperial finance. Trace his education, his mentors. Look at his London School of Economics pedigree, his City of London ties. The British invisible empire constantly manufactures people and institutions like him and his foundation. In an excellent piece on Substack written back in 2021 entitled How the British Invented George Soros, Richard Poe documents that Soros has deliberately been made the boogeyman by the British elite to divert attention from them. If you want to dive deeper into this, become a paid Promethean Action member, and you'll find the link to Poe's Substack and much more in the show notes. Now, let's go back to why we are being subjected to a government shutdown every few years. It all goes back to the British and how they hijacked the economic policymaking of our country at the very beginning of the 20th century. As President Trump is fond of reminding us, under William McKinley, with his tariff policy and his American system policies, we ran such huge surpluses that we had to form a commission to figure out how to spend the money. Then McKinley was assassinated. And what did we get? The Federal Reserve modeled on the Bank of England. And what else did we get? The idea of a federal budget. Prior to the 20th century, we did not obsess about making the federal budget balance. We didn't have a federal budget. We authorized necessary programs, and when they were accompanied by national banking policies and tariffs, the economy grew and we ran a surplus. If we ran a deficit, we built our way out of it with American system policies like Trump wants to do today. But the Federal Reserve and the budget balancing process are British imports by way of one of the worst presidents in American history, the British-directed Woodrow Wilson. Trump is challenging those policies in a most fundamental way. He's adopted the McKinley method of building and growing our way out of the deficits. And this administration is mounting the most serious challenge to the Federal Reserve in living memory, questioning its very mission and its accountability. When Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent calls for sunlight, including the prospect of a full audit, the Fed's priesthood panics. So if you want to end the shutdown theater in the future, then we're going to have to change the target. We have to cripple the Federal Reserve, not the government. The enemy from within that Trump warned our military about isn't just Antifa thugs or immigrant gangs. It's this entire British imperial financial, political, and strategic architecture that has been running the show. Trump has showed us the way forward. In the Middle East, he broke their rules, and we see a genuine chance for peace. On the economy, he's reviving the McKinley model that made America prosperous. And now with his challenge to the Fed, he's taking aim at the root of the problem. But the fight isn't over. The Soros network, the Blair apparatus, the Fed priesthood, they're all connected, and they're all fighting back. The shutdown theater is just the latest, and it'll play itself out. But what's important is how do we end that apparatus? The apparatus, which is the real enemy within, created by the British. That's why you need to subscribe to Promethean Action, or up your game and become a paying member. We'll give you the intelligence and the tools you need to fight. Because the future of our republic depends on citizens who can see through the smoke on the battlefield and know how to win the war. So this has been your midweek update. Stay focused, stay mobilized, and thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.